here we are at 12:09. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to Refresh. I am truly hoping that with this time together that I will be able to be refreshed, because that is what we do and that is what Generation W is. But after last night, I think we're needing more of a refresh. For me, anyway, I think I am in need of a reset. Candidly, I have to say, I'm disturbed, I'm disgusted. I can't think of anyone in any aspect of my life that I would invite in, right? Whose behavior I would tolerate, that was so intent on intimidation and misdirection and disrespect. You know, we are a nation in need right now. We are a people searching for help. We are families who, no matter the color of our skin or where we're born, are seeking a place, a healthy place, a caring place, a concerned place that breathes in and out equity and opportunity. And so I have to say, in a funny way, I take comfort in the ongoing revelation of how people choose to let us know who they are and what is important to them, how they choose to spend their time and their intentional choices to lift us up or not, to bring us together or not, amplifying our abilities, which is what happens when we do believe in each other, and the enduring and most needed commitment to the greater good. If I asked you now, what gives your life the most meaning? Many of our answers, we would say our families for sure, but we would talk about things that we do that are about being part of something bigger than ourselves. That forms that interconnected thread of the ever essential fabric that knits us together, right? Vibrant colors, a foray of textures that stimulates our senses. It makes us feel alive and connected. And in this time of COVID, connection, as we know, is more powerful, more needed than ever. Well, let me say this. And by saying this, I immediately get refreshed, Shelley. Our guest today understands this full well. She has lived her life, a media mogul, a mom, and now a mayor, truly caring about others, truly believing that public service is about the public. And how fun today that we will spend time with Mayor Shelley Brindle, the proud, firstly elected woman to be mayor of Westfield, New Jersey, a powerhouse in business and one in life. Shelley, I'm sorry for this technical difficulty, but here we are. Such is life these days, huh?
Absolutely. And I think actually what we've experienced today is just kind of where we all are, and it's about adapting, right? And I think that's the lesson that we'll all take out of, I think, these unprecedented times. It's not what has happened to us, but it's how we've adapted to it. So I hope it's made people more flexible and innovative and understanding. So, but thank you for that amazing introduction.
Well, of course. I'm so excited you're there. And there's so many places that we can talk about, but I think the best place is, I know all I am, and I think a lot of us are just really excited and intrigued by the seat you're sitting in right now. And we'll talk about how you got here, but you are a mayor of a city. You are sitting in a place that gives you a really unique perspective. And I was wondering if you would share some of that with us. Like, what are you seeing these days?
Absolutely. So Westfield is a town of about 31,000 people. It's one of those affluent bedroom New York City communities. It's full of very highly educated people. And someone kindly said, I'm the mayor of a town of problem solvers. And what that means, I'm the mayor of a town where everybody's an expert. So that in and of itself presents its own challenges, but it's not, a lot of the economic hardship and so forth that's really being most gripped by, I think, what we're experiencing with COVID. So, but that being said, I think what we do see, it's interesting. This has really been a window where I sit, a window into terms of how people respond to circumstances which they can't control. And it's a real window into certain behaviors in terms of those that have learned the skill of resilience, and those that have been in an environment that they've always been, very much controlling, and how when things are not in their control, things just kind of can spiral out of control. So it's, for me, regardless, I think, of your level of affluence or education, or quite frankly, there's a lot of many people who like to praise the appearance that they have those things and don't. It's a real window into how people respond to crisis. And this can be very surprising. There's people that you thought would be handling it very well and not at all. And there's those that I think are really able to adapt. That's been very interesting.
So tell us, let's dig in a little bit there. Like, what you know, I guess people, do they feel like anyone can call you? You're the mayor. I mean, my town, does everyone feel like they can call the mayor and say, hey, by the way, my trash isn't picked up, or by the way, my kid's sick and I need a doctor? I mean, what's the range of things you address?
I made the mistake before I ran, because I've lived in this town for 27 years. And when I ran, like, I never called the mayor. So, and it never occurred to me to call the mayor. So I kind of assumed that everybody lived in my town and felt the same way. And I learned very differently. It's crazy how many people call the mayor about things that you would have never thought of ordinarily. And I've also probably been a much more visible and accessible mayor than any of the ones that have come before me. I've really redefined what the mayor's role should be. And quite honestly, I think what people should have a right to expect from their elected officials. And I think previously it had been treated as somewhat ceremonial. And we're paying the price for the fact that we haven't had a real proactive leader or visionary in terms of driving our town forward. So as a result of me being really out there and visible and very proactive on things like social media and so forth, I realized, and I was very, all about transparency, which I still firmly believe in wholeheartedly. But you do realize when you put things out there, you have to be ready for incoming. And so as a result, the more people are informed, which is great, the more I get back in. So I get a lot incoming. And as a result, because I'm so out there, people feel like they could just pick up the phone or email me or call me regularly. So, and the gamut, and it runs the gamut, what people call me about. From real, really things that really hit me about economic hardship and my unemployment, and I lost my job and my kids in crisis kind of calls, to I'm so mad about the pothole in front of my house. So it really runs the gamut. Yeah, and it takes a lot of patience. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes you just want to tell people to get a little perspective on things. So
right. So I guess we also want to understand what made you decide to run for office. We're going to talk about your history at HBO, but before we do that, you were on the stage. I guess it was, well, it have to be 2 years ago, because this year we haven't been on the stage, right? In our little Zoom boxes. And we were celebrating the fact that more and more women were raising their hands or being encouraged or invited to run. And so let's just watch this video of Shelley Brindle at Generation W telling us about why she chose to run for office.
The candidate that was supposed to be for mayor ended up dropping out 2 weeks before the election. I was actually away at a yoga retreat, and I don't even do yoga, so that's another story. But I was in Mexico at a yoga retreat with not one person I knew, and I learned that this guy's dropping out. So I send my 18-year-old daughter to a meeting with the Democratic Committee. And at the end of the meeting, they say to her, do you think you can convince your mom to run for mayor? So my daughter called me the next morning, and we're chatting, and she asked me if I would, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's not really what I was thinking. And then she said to me, you know what, Mom, you can't think about winning, you can only think about making a difference. And just by running, you'll make a difference. Wow. So what do you say?
And obviously you said,
what do you say? Yeah, I mean, as you know, the follow-up is, I wanted to say, shut up, who taught you that? But yeah, I mean, when your 18-year-old daughter says that, and I think it was a bit of a message about, sometimes you got to step up and do the things that, you can't rely on others to do the work that you don't want to do. And I think that has really been my takeaway from all of it, is that, yeah, I had all these issues in town and I saw these things, but I just wanted a seat at the table. I didn't actually want to be in charge of them because that's too much work. And I had all these other things I wanted to do. And then I realized, and I'll be honest with you, I think I was going to run for council. And I actually think I'm a much better mayor than I would have been a council person. And I think sometimes the stars aligned, and this is exactly what I was supposed to have been doing. I just didn't want to raise my hand because for all the reasons, for all the reasons I can tell you why it's hard. But I think that's what I try to impart on all these kids, and quite frankly, a lot of women, is that you cannot rely on others to do the work you don't want to do. And that's why I tell people about even running for office. We all say that, right? Like, we want all this change, and but yet, but not me, right? I don't want to do that. But you know what? I mean, if it's not you, then who? And I know we say that all the time. But like, yeah, I didn't want to run for office. I'm not a politician. I don't like being a public figure. But you know what? I was going to sit back and watch someone else try to do what I knew I had skills and capabilities to do. And I think that's a bit of the takeaway and what I want to, impart on certainly a new generation. So.
Right. Okay. So you talked about hardships. What's the most challenging aspect of being? I don't know. You know what? Let's start with the good stuff. What do you love about being mayor?
Yeah. You're asking. We're having this at a really hard time.
I know, but I actually, you know what? And that's probably, it's a good thing you have a well of goodness built up, because these are the times that probably make you want to tear your hair out, right?
And I know we talked about it early, but as I said, and I'll tell you the good things, but everybody's operating in stress behavior right now. And I, certainly in my days at HBO, and we all had, we went through the whole, how we all work together, and we talked about different levels of behavior. And stress behavior is when it's that fight or flight response and people lash out and they're not really acting oftentimes rationally. I see a whole community and probably a whole country in many cases where people are operating in stress behavior. And so the things that people react to and say things, I really try to say in normal circumstances, this would not be happening. So that's really hard. But the reason why I ran for mayor, and there's two things that I love about it. And one of it is I love seeing the vision that I have for our town in terms of the economic development, and where I see with such clarity where we can be in 10 years. And actually what you see when you're mayor is you can actually physically see the changes that you make. Like, you can envision, like I just left a meeting this morning about an adaptive reuse of an old factory, and they want to build one of those organic indoor farms and create it all sustainable, and it's a restaurant. And I left getting like really excited, and actually being able to look back and see this meeting and then actually see that ultimately in place in a couple of years. There's not a lot of places where you can actually physically see the output of kind of an idea and it become reality. So that notion of creative and visionary thinking and actually being in charge and leading the way for making it happen is really invigorating to me. The other one is less visible, and I didn't realize how touched I would be by it, but I felt like our community was a very exclusive one. And there were a lot of people that didn't feel like they had a voice at the table. And I'll be honest with you, I was one of those. Like, my life prior to this was I worked in the city, I commuted every day, I had 3 kids at home, and I was not involved in our community. I wasn't engaged. I didn't know all these big folks. And I kind of had a vision for what I thought our community was, this very kind of conservative, Wall Street kind of thing. And what I realized when I ran for mayor, there's actually a lot of people like me in our community who felt the same way. So you just didn't feel like you were really welcome here. So when I ran, I discovered there's this whole creative community. There's a there's a big Indian community, but everybody was living in their own little corners. So the beauty, what I've done is I've brought all these people out, and we've had like a multicultural day, and I'm an honorary member of our Indian community. There's a lot of folks, like, we have African-American neighborhoods, historic neighborhoods that have felt ignored for a long time. So for me, giving voice to these people and making them feel that they have equal weight in our community is like incredibly moving for me. Like raising the gay pride flag for the first time in history. This year we painted rainbow crosswalks in downtown. And parents were coming up to me crying, saying, my son, who doesn't live here anymore, swears he's never coming back, never felt like he was welcome here. I can't tell you what this means for me. So those are the moments I think when I leave being mayor, I'll look back and think like the ones that really touched me as if I had fundamentally changed the culture of this community to be more inclusive.
I, wow, you just went through so much. First of all, let me touch on your urban farm. We have one here, so if you want anyone who's doing it, indoor, a girlfriend of mine did it, Tracy, and it is fantastic, and she has catering there, and it is a wonderful thing. The idea of painting these rainbow crosswalks, not only is it a tangible, visible sign of welcoming, but it just transcends all kinds of equity, equality, welcoming invitation messages, right? So while you are feeling good, sounds like your community is feeling good too.
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think about all these things that they can't undo when I'm no longer here. Like nobody can take away the rainbow crosswalks without, I dare them, right? But you're right, that fundamentally it's rolling out the carpet to tell everybody the kind of community that we aspire to be. So yeah, I think that but I will tell you, yes, there's a lot of new people who are feeling great, but I am disrupting the power structure of what's been in this community. I knew it when I came in, not to talk partisan politics, but just the reality is, I'm a Democrat. We've never had a Democrat council before. When I ran, there was our council mayor is 9 Republicans, 0 Democrats. And then I came in and my whole slate won based on the backs of 50 high school kids that helped lead this campaign. And we took over and had a 5-4 Democrat majority in the council. And now it's 8-1. What I'm hearing, the hate, the misogyny, some things that come back to me, what it is, and it's kind of what you're seeing in many cases, I am disrupting the old power structure in town. And you can feel the lashing out that comes at me is not, it's bigger than just me. It's a disruption of people losing what they have historically felt their place to be in our community. And so, yes, there's a ton of people that are like celebrating and feeling part of this, inclusive place, but there's also some people that aren't too happy about it.
But, that's always going to be the case.
Yeah.
That is, and not to write anybody's feelings off. You want to be as inclusive as possible. But it's never 100%, even though I know that we would love it to be 100%, correct? So,
yeah.
All right, so you talked about some vitriol, and you're now a public figure, but you're a mom. You got 3 kids, yeah. Right? Yeah. And I know you have 2 kids in college, so they're reading stuff, they're seeing messages, and how do you as a mom, and how do your kids, how do they deal with their mom being skewered?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. They're actually pretty good about it. So I'm sure, I don't know about in your community, but our community, unfortunately, many around the country, there's these, local Facebook groups, right? And they end up becoming these big groups where everybody's fighting. They're supposed to be like, help me find a plumber. Anybody recommend a plumber, an air conditioning person? And they end up becoming these vitriolic fights, political stupid fights on social media with each other. And my name comes up quite a bit. I actually got out of all of those groups because it was not good for my mental health, but my kids are still in those groups. And in college, my daughter will text me sometimes, Mom, what did you do to like the park or whatever? Because they see these fights in town and so forth. But they're pretty, they're actually very protective and they're pretty good about it. My son, who's a 10th grader, I don't know if he appreciates sometimes the scrutiny of being, a public name in this town. I hate to say it, but like, I didn't really think about this. When you ask me what I don't like, I don't really like being a public figure. I wish I could do this job invisibly. Like, I feel that when I go now to our downtown that I'm being scrutinized all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, am I wearing my mask right? And because if not, I can promise you, there will be a picture on social media about the mayor not adhering to like her own, executive orders or whatever. And that's happened. So there comes a level of anxiety about making sure that you're doing everything correctly because of how, at least in a politically charged environment, someone will take it and try to use it against you for not often very legitimate reasons.
Well, I think you'll appreciate this. Irene Britt just sent a note and said, disrupt away, Mayor. We love you.
Well,
right?
I'm a disruptor at heart, and I've been a disruptor my entire career, and that was the role I played at HBO. But I was very lucky that I was able to play that somewhat of a disruptor role in a very growing, dynamic company and culture where there was, and working in a media, in an industry that was always being disrupted. So that whole need to continually innovate and disrupt definitely lent itself to kind of my nature. So yeah, I will tell you, when I ran, it was not only in that clip you saw with my daughter. I mean, in the back of my mind, it was very much intended to disrupt the power structure in Westfield, and I was not delusional to think how hard that was going to be, just even publicly. But it can, you add a pandemic on top of it, and it can be kind of mentally exhausting. But
Kind of mentally exhausting. It is mentally exhausting, right? We're all in this mental exhaustion, right?
Yeah.
And that's what. And by the way, and that's why we look to our leaders, right? Leaders like you who find the inner resolve, right, to have us focus on the goodness and the connection and paint us rainbow crosswalks, Shelley. I can't even tell you how I think this is a national movement of rainbow crosswalks. I just think it's so incredibly meaningful.
You know what was so great? Well, part of it came out of because we couldn't, our flags were at half staff during Pride Month. So it just didn't feel right to me to raise a Pride flag while all of the other flags are at half staff for COVID. So we are trying to think of another way to demonstrate kind of, our message of inclusion and so forth. So we worked with the high school LGBTQ club, and they came out at 3 in the morning, and we put lights, and the high school kids painted the crosswalks. So by 8 a.m. people woke up to these crosswalks, and people went crazy, and it was really, wow, that's one of the things, like that was really meaningful, not only for me but for the kids. So that was very cool.
All right, so Kimberly Chaikin just wrote in, and I'm going to read this. Kim lives on the West Coast. She lives like in Santa Rosa. So not this year, but I think last year she was in where the fires were. Oh, and she said, You must be exhausted. I'm exhausted listening to you. Keep up the great work, and thank you for serving your community, and yay for the Pride crosswalks.
Oh, right? That's so nice. Thank you.
I know it's good to get kind of support. So let's talk a little bit. Well, you know what, Christina, before we do that, Christina wants to know what advice. Oh, wait a second. What advice would you give somebody who wants to run for office, which is a good thing to ask. But I also saw this. Holly Mitchell says she is running for office thanks to you. She's up in Connecticut.
She told me she's been thinking about it. Is she doing it?
She says, Shelley, so inspiring. I'm running for a seat on my town. Okay, help me. RTM because of you.
That might be her. Your local councils and boards have different names, so it might be her local council, like her representative town committee. Yes, it's our. We call it town council. She calls it the town committee. So it's like a council seat. Oh, Holly,
representative town committee. Whoa! And Holly Mitchell, she is a disruptor. So here we go. There we go.
They have select persons in Connecticut. Yes.
All right. Sherry, while we're talking, put up that picture. That would be cool. So they don't have a mayor. They have a first select man. Ha.
Yes. Exactly. That's something you should change. Right. Way to go is right. Well, I will give you. Lisa Shallot introduced me to someone who I spoke to, another friend that I've. Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's our rainbow crosswalk. So yeah.
How cool is that? So that's our own star. That's Natalia.
Oh my God, that's Natalia.
That's Kasha's daughter and husband in the crosswalk. How cool is that?
That's great.
Generation W reaches everywhere. We love it.
That makes me so happy. I'll give you a perfect example of what the response was to that at fall council meeting. I got calls from a certain group saying, am I now going to paint a blue line down the middle of the street for the police? So it's, for everything, every reaction generates another reaction. So, and I was actually, I found it offensive that they would think that there was a moral equivalence to that. But anyway, but that's kind of that's what you get.
Right, all the time. So let's talk a little bit about your career at HBO.
Yeah. So
by the way, I want to make, what's so funny? We had this thing the other night, and I said, we're at a table with a bunch of kids, and I said, okay, do you know who Frank Sinatra is? Do you know who Mickey Mantle is? And it's funny, HBO, how long has HBO been around?
Well, since 1970, right? And I remember going to my grandparents. And so, a little bit of the background, and we talked about it. So, my dad was a U.S. Air Force pilot, and he was killed in Vietnam when I was 6 years old. So I was raised by my mom and I have two older sisters. So and it'll lean into my kind of HBO career and where I ended up and being the first female mayor. So I didn't have a male figure in the house, and in my family, be out of necessity. So my mom picked us up from Las Vegas, Nevada, and moved us to the small town Grafton, Virginia. Ida Ekutum, Tab Tiger.
Oh yeah, hold on. But by the way, we have to talk about the Tab Tigers because she is celebrating you. We have like what, 4 now? Wait a second, hold on. Is LeVar Stoney? That's the
mayor of Richmond.
Right. So we have 2 mayors coming out of this high school, and then of course we have the amazing Katie Holman, who just came back from 3 years in India working for General Mills, and of course Ita, who we all know and love, and she has been on Refresh as well. Tigers everywhere.
And it was Women in America who connected me to Ida. I didn't know about any of that, but I ended up in Grafton, Virginia, because the military gave my mom one move after my dad was killed, and she picked Grafton, Virginia, because it is a lot. Hampton Roads has a lot of military, so we had a lot of the benefits that the military provided. But my point being is, so we grew up without kind of a male figure in the house, and there were no gender roles. Like, we were cutting the grass and we were doing everything. And I didn't really think about how that might have shaped my thinking about that you're just supposed to do anything and everything, right? Just because I didn't know any other way. So I was lucky enough to find a job with HBO, when I was like 24 in Philadelphia, starting out in sales. And then I moved to New York, and then I just started getting moved around to, marketing but pretty much every job you could imagine. And then ultimately I ran marketing, and then I ran sales, and then our biggest account in sales at the time, which was Comcast. And then the 2 heads of those groups left, and they merged those departments and they put them under me. And it was at a time when I remember I had to build kind of the future vision for HBO's revenue model and their distribution model. And I remember telling them, all right, well, there's this company over there that's sending DVDs in the mail in red envelopes. And I think that our competition isn't like Showtime. It isn't those folks. It is really, where we're going to be with the new, the Facebooks and Googles of the world, and those folks with the red envelopes, which we all know now is Netflix, right? So it was really, so it was about rebuilding not only a vision for where we were going to go, but a culture and after inheriting all these people, many of them had longtime HBOers, and getting them to reimagine kind of the future and who we were going to be. And I did a lot of crazy stuff. Like, I got rid of all our paper. I didn't let anybody submit things on paper. I gave everybody iPads. It just started forcing people to think innovatively. And I always said, well, you can't fire everybody, but you can inspire everybody. And so it was about trying to inspire people to be part of this larger vision, and what role they could play in getting us there. And so, and I introduced this whole culture based upon transparency, empowerment, and accountability, and was very open about it. And there were people we had to let go. There's some people that voluntarily said, I'm out. People that rose to the occasion were surprisingly rose to the occasion, and others I thought and I was disappointed by. And so we had it was a really rough 2 years, and I knew it was going to take about 3 years. And my best moment at HBO, and makes me I should have left, was, so it was kind of about a year after this huge reorganization, and we had let a lot of people go. I introduced this new culture. I didn't know how it was going to go. And so we had our first big get together with everybody in the Time Warner Center. And, we had all the talent, all the stuff that we normally do. HBO was always first class. And at the end of the meeting, and I kept wondering, oh my gosh, is everybody gonna be okay? Are they gonna get there? And I was curious and wondering how people had really embraced this culture of innovation and change that I had talked about, and taking risks. So at the very end of the conference, it was before dinner, And I was about to tell everybody where to go for dinner and where the buses are going to pick them up. And there's a room of like 400 people. And I hear this music start playing. It'd be like at your Gen W conference, Donna. And all of a sudden you're thinking it's one thing and then something happens and all this music starts playing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, someone screwed up the audio. And I look back and there's a big sign, a big thing on the video behind it said, thank you, Shelley, for making it so fun. And up came will.i.am's I Have a Feeling. And they had been practicing this flash mob for like 4 weeks and they had orchestrated this huge flash mob to really demonstrate to me that they heard me, and then they embraced this new culture. And there were 30-year employees dancing along like new hires. And I knew at that moment that even though our results hadn't yet shown the outcome of our change, we are well on our way. And 6 months later, we had our best performance in 30 years. So it is about, embracing and inspiring people to think that they can do things differently, but you have to show them the way. And that same culture is what I'm trying to bring to a community here as mayor. And a part of me was just curious, can you apply those same leadership principles in the public sector that can work so effectively in the private sector? And that's been my kind of big experiment, if you will, on this seat.
Okay, so even though ETA just posted Shelley Brindle 2024, so what do you think? What's your outcome? What did you learn? Because clearly,
you know what? What was my table? You know what? Yes, and I'll tell you why. And honestly, because your first, and it's really funny when we started turning around our performance at HBO, people kept asking me what I was doing with our clients, like, did I implement like some kind of new strategy or new incentives or whatever? And I'm like, it wasn't what we did externally, it's what we did internally. And it really is the multiplier effect in terms of taking employees and really empowering them, inspiring them, and holding them accountable for delivering on your vision. And because you can't do it on your own. And so same thing when I came to town hall, everybody thinks about municipal employees. Many of them are union. People, they go to municipal work not because they're looking to climb a corporate ladder, right? They're looking for a safe, secure life for them and their families. And so it's a different level of motivation. But I did learn, and I think it's true, when you think about psychology, I don't think anybody typically goes to work and say, I kind of want to be mediocre today. I just don't think so. And I think our fundamental, our human nature is to want validation, to want to feel like you're making a contribution and then feel like you're acknowledged for it. So my thing was I was applying those same principles that I applied to our employees at HBO to the employees here. And it's definitely difficult. The accountability piece is very difficult, especially with unions. But you find those sparks in different groups and hope that they can lead the way for others around them. And so you start with the employees, honestly, and create a culture for them to want to take ownership of the results and do more than what they had been expected to. You do that, and then your community will start seeing the benefits of that. And it's true, like our public works people, you know what I did in our budget? I told them I was so confident in them. We accelerated our capital budget to give them more equipment, right? Because I knew what they were going to be able to do with it. And that sends a message to them, right? Wow, okay, they love their tractors and stuff, right? So sure enough, like the beautification efforts that they've done and so forth have not gone unnoticed by the public. So you start with that. You start with your team and you build a culture of them that want to really exceed beyond what they thought they were capable of. And then the results just start magnifying outwardly. So that's what I discovered. Human nature is human nature, whether you're in a company, a Fortune 500, a small business, or in the public sector, is how you tap into it to get the best out of people.
Okay, so I don't know how everybody else is feeling. Oh, yes, I do, because let's see. Joy said she's amazing. I'm totally in awe. Lisa Salad says she loves you so much.
Oh, jeez.
But listen, I want you to hear this. It's very important. You are doing angels work, and you need to hear all this stuff. But you know what's interesting? As I watched last night, I'm like, I don't ever want to run for office, ever. And yet I sit here listening to you, and I am not alone in this, and I am inspired, right? I am inspired. Yes, there is a place. Yes, we can do good. Yes, it is possible, because it is about positive leadership, right? I spoke early on about a nation in need, right? People looking and seeking. And when we find that, right, we are amplified. And that's what you're showing us with this conversation, which is amazing. Now, I have to just say this. Allison, I don't know Allison, but hi, Allison. Allison Roblox, she wants to know if you can speak to your experience re the lack of support between women, especially in the workplace, and how you try to address and improve it. By the way, that is a great question, because I know how much I have been the benefit, as many of us here, of your support of women. So she wants to understand better the lack of support that you see.
Yeah, I gotta say, I've been really lucky in certainly in my career to have been really. There's been many women who have paved the way for me, and so I should say I maybe have felt it a bit, but I've certainly witnessed it. I don't know. I feel like with women that sometimes at these levels, they feel like it's a zero-sum game. Like, oh my gosh, if she is successful in my group, it's almost at my expense. And I think we gotta, a rising tide floats all boats, right? And we all have to understand how someone else's success is also your success. And I don't know if it is our need to, I don't know if it's as much as tearing someone down as opposed to not being proactively helpful. But I don't know if it's rooted in our own insecurity, because with good reason, because of what women have endured their whole careers. But I just think I'll be honest with you, I just think women fundamentally lack confidence. And I think we make up for it by being perfect in everything we do, or trying to be perfect in everything we do, which then I think ultimately comes back to bite us as we get to more senior levels. And I think when we don't help other women, it's not because I think we're inherently bad people. I think we fundamentally are insecure, and we're just thinking like someone's gonna take our place. And I don't know how to fix that part.
Right. I am sure we can make that a whole refresh.
Yeah, but I will tell you, I think one thing, Donna, that you do for sure is I think what you can do is you model it, right? And I think that's how I see it. It's like, I can't necessarily change an individual, but I can model it and see like how, by lifting other women up and by collaborating with other women. And I think you model that for others. And I think that's what's so important. And that's why organizations, like Gen W and other organizations like that are so important to model this female camaraderie and support, and see and demonstrate a rising tide does indeed float all boats. And we need to believe that.
And live it, which we do, and we feel it,
yes.
And we experience it. I mean, look at the people who showed out and up for you today, right? It's and giving you the recognition and validation of the work that you're doing. It's
I wish all of them would move to Westfield. I could use some of that locally.
I am sure. And I can attest to that as well here, believe me. But we do have this connected web, which is, very, very powerful, which I think is fantastic. You've talked about one of your, well, you know what, let's do this. We have a graphic. You've talked about doing right things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And that is being something that is very influential, inspirational for getting people to come along with your new culture, right? Yeah. So if you would, talk to us a little bit about how you frame this.
Yeah, the thing about, I have to say, like, I certainly see this in politics, about checking your ego. And I think it works all the time. Like, every position I've had at HBO, and quite frankly, I'm even trying to do this as mayor, I would say, and maybe I'm just lazy, I would be like, how can I make myself irrelevant, right? When you think about that, think about like, okay, how can I make myself irrelevant so they don't need me to do this job anymore? And when you think about how would you do that, you would do that by, surrounding yourself with really smart people, making sure they have all the information and resources they need to succeed, not be afraid to let everybody know that they're smarter than you are, right? and then give them and then empower them to do their jobs. And over time, you'll see that you're really not needed. And the funny part about it, and the perverse part about it that people don't know, once that happens, you end up getting rewarded for that, and that is ultimately the success to getting to wherever it is you want to go. And I think that oftentimes and I think women maybe are very guilty of that. I don't know if it's ego so much as validation, and we are so needing validation, and oftentimes we're too controlling, and we try to control everything, which ultimately minimizes really what our true contributions could be. So I think in anything that you do, if you're looking for a leadership role, like for me, a mayor, I'm thinking about everything I do, I'm thinking for the long term. I do not think about what's going to get me elected next. I think about what, like the rainbow crosswalks, what will be here and can sustain itself long after I'm gone, which is why I'm very focused on our employees. I think I've now worked with our town administrator to almost change over 80% of the leadership and positions in town hall. That's going to be here for a long time. And so that's the type of thing and guess what happens? You do that and these people are amazing and all of a sudden the results look great. And I don't know, maybe I could get reelected without even trying, right? But I think that's what you have to really think about is stop searching for validation and do the right things for all the right reasons, and the validation will come. And I think we get too focused on the outcome.
Okay, well, listen, Lisa Tepper says it wasn't until she turned 60 that she gave up on being perfect, asking for permission, and not taking things so personally. Wow, liberating. By the way, that's why we do our work with teen girls, right? We don't want them we don't want them to be us. We want them to see and learn things earlier, right? Give these gifts younger, because that liberation, Lisa Tepper, earlier in your life, I am sure would have been a welcome gift, right?
I'm always telling my girls to break the rules, by the way.
Right. Heather Smith says, I did not watch the debate last night because I already voted by mail. Good for you. However, I need more words of wisdom from Mayor Brindle. She is so real. Ita, you hearing that? You hearing that? I noticed you also speak about looking for things you can control. And we had a fantastic conversation 2 weeks ago with Lisa Shallett, really focusing on curveballs. And I am sure as a mayor, you're getting curveballs every single day, but this idea of, and you gave some really good examples of things that you can control, the little things. And it's funny, I feel like it's going to synagogue for me, but hearing this every week from different voices in different ways is really nourishing.
Yeah.
Really nourishing.
And I have to give a shout out to Lisa Shallett because she epitomizes women supporting other women. And she is selfless, and I assume Lisa's on here, but she's just amazing. And she said, and she's introduced me to some women who are just like, I think the deputy mayor in Scarsdale and other people, and she's just really, she is exactly what we talk about in terms of modeling what that looks like for helping other women. So she's been great. But you're right. And I always tell people, even in their careers, what lack of control brings anxiety, right? And there's nothing good. There's nothing good that comes out of anxiety. Nothing. It manifests itself in all kinds of really bad ways. So, in any situation you're in, you always want to put yourself in control of the outcome. And I did that my whole career. And part of it is because I never aspired to be a C-suite executive. I just didn't. I just never thought it was, maybe I never thought it was possible. So it was just thinking I would just go on and do something else. So that had definitely enabled me to act very fearlessly, I should say, throughout my career, which then I kept getting rewarded to. But the other thing too is that I know we mentioned this, I always tell women, I tell everybody, but for women in particular, is to be very financially responsible. Live within your means. Don't feel that, and sometimes our need for validation often can show up that we need to show that validation. There's a physical manifestation of what that looks like in terms of material things, but they can be big baggage for you and can ultimately hold you back in your career, because you can get so consumed with maintaining that you end up becoming very risk averse, which to me is ultimately never a good place to lead from. So if you can being financially secure is very empowering. I think it's the most empowering thing we can do for ourselves, because like I always lived at HBO is like, you know what, it always enabled me to speak up and say the right thing, even with risk. Because I said I can walk out the door tomorrow with my head held high. And I think that's
and pay the rent and eat.
And pay the rent and eat. And I said, okay, I'll go work at Starbucks. I mean, I just felt like, you know, I always say, fire me for doing the right thing. I'll take that any day of the week. And I just never felt beholden to that part of the, you know, the paycheck. And I know it's, you know, easier said than done, but it's just and those are values I also wanted to impart on my kids as well.
Right.
So
Fire me for doing the right thing. I love that, right? But I do understand this sense of, it's a sense of internal justice that says, I believe in what I'm doing. I'm going to do it the way I think it can be done. I know that I have others' best interests at heart. I have validation that that is how I'm behaving, right? You get that feedback. And so therefore, I'm going to continue to do that. And that's liberating as well, right? Really liberating.
Absolutely.
So is that an empathic piece, by the way, when you say you want your kids to live that? Is there an empathy about that? Because right now there's a real question in our world about whether we have enough empathy to take us to the places where we really need to go.
You know, and I'll speak about from my career, and then it's how you define empathy. And I'll tell you, like, I was known for being very direct and a straight shooter. Like, you're going to get the real truth when you come see me, right? And you can interpret that sometimes, like, I might tell you what you don't want to hear, right? And but what I found so awful through my career is how many times people would let employees go through their career and never really giving them the right feedback about their performance, which would enable them, which would then empower them to make decisions about their lives. And so I like, when I told you I inherited that big job, you know, back at HBO, I found there were employees that had been there for 25 years that people used to talk about openly, about what their deficiencies were, or, oh, we put them in that role because they couldn't do that. And I was like, well, did anyone ever tell them that? Did anyone give them the option of maybe looking elsewhere or another job? And I felt ultimately when I had to dismantle that group, it was so awful. I felt like what people felt they were doing in terms of being the kind thing was an incredible disservice to these folks, because by the time they were given this information, it was too late for them to take it and actually move on with their lives in a different direction. So when you talk about empathy, like, I'm really empathetic about people living up to their potential. And we have an obligation as leaders. If it's not going to happen in your organization, you have an obligation as to that individual to let them know and help them find another path. And yeah, it's like a real pet peeve of mine, honestly, when people don't give honest feedback and they think they're being kind, when actually they're really, it's actually incredibly inconsiderate.
Right. Interesting, right? And I know there's a lot of people listening today taking that to heart, who are dealing with many of those issues right in front of them. And so I think that's incredibly valuable advice.
You got to flip it. Like, I think people think like, oh my gosh, I'm being so mean telling them that. But think about it. No, you are giving them information that empowers them to put them in control of their outcome. And that goes back to where we started. Anytime you can put someone or you in control of your own outcome, suddenly you feel it. You're like, oh, okay. The anxiety goes away, and you're like, okay, I know what I need to do. It's that notion. Yeah, it's so people need to do that as leaders.
No, I think that's incredible and timely advice for the times that we're in, for sure. We started like 9 minutes late. I know people have schedules. I don't want to keep them. I'm going to give everybody a chance. If anybody has a last question, I'm just so overcome. I want to thank Allison for asking that question about women not being supportive, but recognizing that we here today, there's a lot of men who are very supportive here, and Chris Reese is here, and David Emmanuel, and probably guys that I don't know, but there are so many unbelievable women who are of the ilk of being supportive Kelly Watson, she was like our first one on this morning. Not long followed
Of course
by
she was.
Irene, Irene, of course. And there's Debbie Banks, and I don't want to miss anybody. Our whole team is on listening today. Latrice Burrell is here. It's really Marianne Jacoby. I can go on. There's 44 people right now. I can't name them all. That said, everybody here contributes to a positive community, and you are modeled incredibly positive leadership today, which I don't know about all of you, but remember I said I thought we needed a refresh or a reset? I am reset and refreshed beyond, Shell, honestly.
Oh, thank you,
really,
Donna.
no, really amazing. Let's see if there's any last questions. How much longer is Shelley's term? That's a good question.
My term is up next year.
And
So,
the question is, when do you decide whether you are going to want another term?
I have to let them know by April 1st.
Oh my gosh, okay. And do you want to break the story here or what? Because we're such a news-breaking organization.
You know what? So first of all, this is a volunteer job, and I get paid $1 a year. And when I left HBO, the plan wasn't to never not earn another dime. So I do need health insurance. I do need to make some kind of living. So I'm trying to figure out, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just going to see how things play out.
Right.
But I do have a very specific agenda of things that I want accomplished here. So we're going to see where things are.
Oh, that's awesome. And you know what? And Ito was on early, of course, your high school buddy, which I actually thought you knew each other, and I didn't realize you reconnected in New York City, which is pretty incredible. Let me say,
Shelley Diamond introduced us.
That's incredible. Incredible. So I want to thank everyone for today. We're refreshed. We're reset. Thanks, Shelley. Always an energetic time to spend with you. You restore belief in public service, right? A note to all of you, if you happen to have teen girls, I know Ruth Spencer Coley and Mariah are on this call. If you happen to know teen girls, please send them our way. We know that schools are in varying stages of either at-home learning or in-school learning. It's kind of been really inconsistent, but our WOW clubs, our virtual WOW clubs have started. We had enormous success bringing girls into a safe space, a welcome place, a fun place where they can most importantly connect with each other and share at a time when isolation and loneliness really seems to be prevailing. And so please, info@genw.com would be great. And we would love to meet as many girls as we can. We'd love to engage as many girls as we can for all the reasons that you heard Shelley talk about today. Next week, I'm happy to see once again a woman many of you may have met. She was also on the Gen W stage. She had a big impact when she talked about her book at the time, Cowgirl Power. Let's see, every time you do that, Charlie, there's another screen. How to kick ass in business and life. And I have to just say, we need to be doing that for sure. She'll be sharing the secrets of personal power. I am all in. And her wisdom, her name is Gay Gaddis. And I love Gay Gaddis's picture comes up on our rotation in the office when I go in. It always makes me smile. I look forward to seeing Gay next week with all of you. Thank you, everyone. Of course, the entire Gen W team. Sherry, our producer, Stacy, Jamie, Kasha, Christina, Tara, Mariah, and Ruth for all participating. To all of you, again, I want to name all your names like I just did that. But no, there is love here from me and, of course, from our mayor. Please keep spreading the word. There's a place to refresh in this world. And we love that our audience keeps growing. Generation W, we so appreciate all the ongoing comments. Just want to let you know that the inspiration and learning from Gen W, the event continues. If you had a link, you have the ability now to rewatch the show. And if you haven't, guess what? You have the opportunity to participate as well. So please check in with us for additional distribution. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you all. Thank you, Donna.
Woo! Refresh!